And I'm back again, and good morning to you. So next we have Palo Alto Networks and Jason Longley, who's the technical leader of the service provider unit here in EMEA. Jason's worked within the service provider environment for much of his career and is very much a believer that operators play a fundamental role in helping their business customers to obviously navigate through today's security challenges, whilst obviously providing innovative value-added solutions. He's worked with numerous startups and led service provider security as well for the EMEA region at Cisco. At Palo Alto Networks, he's very much integrated in his belief of the solutions providing operational simplicity, efficacy, and return of investment than traditional approaches. And obviously, a company not just a market leader, obviously the founder in zero trust security, and one that envisions a world where each day is safer and more secure than the one before. Jason, that would be very nice to achieve, wouldn't it?
It would. Paul, thank you very much for the very, very warm welcome and the opportunity to chat to you today. And thank you everyone for your time listening to the presentation. Maxine did a fantastic job, I think, of outlining some of the challenges that many businesses and also service providers face with security. She did such a good job. She's probably put the fear of God up everyone that actually this is not something that you can fix. I'm here today to talk a little bit about Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE as it's known. And hopefully what's going to come out of today is that there's an opportunity not just for customers of the service providers to benefit for better security, more consistent security, and also cost savings, but also for service providers to use it as an opportunity to monetize as MSSP offerings, sell-through offerings, and build an ecosystem of security offerings that help protect their customers while they're also being able to generate additional revenue for themselves. So fantastic job by Maxine, really sets the landscape of security and some of the challenges that companies are facing. So we're going to run through just very quickly what the security landscape looks today, very broad. We're going to then drop down into some specific challenges businesses face, and I think Maxine covered those very well previously. We'll then look at some service provider challenges because it's a very difficult place to be being a service provider. We're going to talk about some of those challenges. And then we're going to talk about SASE. What is SASE? What are the key components to SASE? And what do they do? And why are they there? We're then going to drill down into some the architecture for the Palo Alto Networks SASE solution. So apologies, we will be talking about Palo Alto Networks. This isn't a sales pitch. But what we will do is we'll give you some view as to what good looks like. If you're if you're a service provider interested in bringing on board a SASE solution for your managed service, then maybe you might want to use some of these characteristics in identifying what kind of solution would be good to put on portfolio. And if you're a customer, you might want to understand what kind of capabilities your service provider should be offering for a SASE solution. So that's where we are. What we'll do first, before we dive into that, is we'll have a look at company vision. So Palo Alto Networks, as you said, Paul, we envision a world where each day is safer and more secure than the one before. But beyond that, really, and underneath the hood of that desire is we want to make security simple. Complexity, change, and the deluge of point products that we see in many networks today is not really conducive to a good security posture. What you want is visibility, consistency, control. And sometimes, and I think Maxine hit the nail on the head when she said it's very difficult to get good security people in cloud, good security people even in infrastructure. So leveraging AI and ML to help with all of that machine learning and identify threats before they become threats, even if they're 0 day, they're unknown threats, is going to be really important. It makes the expensive, hard to find workforce more effective rather than sifting through tens of thousands, if not millions of alerts. So that's something that we really firmly believe in. So I think we all know the world is changing. It's been changing for quite some period of time, but over the last 12 to 18 months, it's been on an accelerated curve. Many businesses have been forced to go through a digital transformation journey that they were probably on anyway. And that journey obviously means that there's an awful lot more endpoints, everything. There's a mobile app for everything. There's a drive. There's an awful lot more cloud applications that people are using. Office 365, Salesforce.com, Dropbox, all of these SaaS services are being used commonly by all sorts of different businesses, be it healthcare, be it banks, be it even telcos themselves. And the big one, I guess, that's really hit us over the last 18 months is that users are working from anywhere. There is no longer a perimeter to your network. It used to be you had an office and people came to the office and you had your perimeter security and that would be your bastion. It doesn't work. You now, obviously with COVID, people are working from their homes and people are working from different devices. And that, again, is a challenge. That change is a significant challenge for most businesses. And just as a slight aside, when the pandemic hit, most businesses had some kind of capability for remote workforce. They had to go out and physically procure hardware for additional VPN concentrators. There was a 2-week, 3-week lead to get them installed. And then, of course, they eventually managed to get that remote access for them. Now, everyone in their workforce was pretty much mobile. So the world has changed quite considerably over the last 18 months, but we're on a journey anyway to cloudification and that digital transformation. The challenge with this journey, as you can imagine, there is a security implication. Basically, loads more devices on the network. How many digital devices do you have? We're looking at IoT devices on the mobile networks. Again, that's going to increase the number of connected devices. And the security posture, how do you maintain the security posture of someone's home network when they're coming in? How do you maintain the security posture of an IoT device that doesn't have enough CPU and capability to adopt security controls? So there are some challenges there. The force of driving your IT, which traditionally sat in your own managed data center, to the cloud, has significant OPEX and sometimes CAPEX benefits. The challenge is a lot of businesses are just picking up their servers, which were within their walled garden, within their perimeter, and dropping them into the cloud without reviewing how they actually implement those in the cloud, whether or not there are vulnerabilities that need to be patched, and whether or not all of the rights and the permissions associated with those servers and the implementation in the cloud is correct. So there are some challenges with taking old technology and dropping it into the new cloud environment. And the backdrop of this is the cyber criminals are getting cleverer and cleverer. They're getting really smart. They know how to get into businesses. They're scanning. You can scan the internet, the entire internet, within 10 minutes to identify any chinks in the armor of any business. And especially if you're focused on a single business, you can get in there and identify very, very quickly by scanning their publicly available IP addresses. So the challenge there is, as soon as a 0-day, as soon as vulnerability is announced, if you're not patching very quickly your external threat surface, then you're open to that vulnerability being exploited. And you need to be on top of your game, obviously, to deal with that threat. So the serious implications, and Maxine mentioned SolarWinds and Colonial, so obviously there's a bit of synergy here within the things. The implications for not doing security well, and when I say not doing security well, I mean you only need to have one chink in the armor and the bad guys can get in. It's not as if, if you've got 99.5% coverage in your security, you can still get hacked. So you need to have visibility, you need to have all of the good posture. The interesting one about SolarWinds, as Maxine said, was it was a supply chain hack, and it was nation state. The people, the hackers, did a really good job of covering up their development activity. They got onto a development server and they actually managed to interfere with the development, the build of a piece of software, and put their malware into that. They then uncovered their tracks that actually even changed any software at all. The interesting thing here is that 18,000 customers downloaded that updated software. Palo Alto Networks was one of them. And just as an example, we have the capability for artificial intelligence and machine learning, i.e., we didn't know that SolarWinds was breached. but we identified through our artificial intelligence and machine learning that the behavioral indicators of compromise, or BIOX, would state that this wasn't good. And we blocked the SolarWinds attack through our Cortex XOR solution. So that kind of says that, you know, machine learning and AI is something that is really, really very, very useful. There are many more hacks. I mean, if we look at the breaches, and if we just look at maybe crypto ransomware, it's thought that crypto ransomware, the cost on a yearly basis to businesses is $20 billion. So that is a significant amount every year. It's something that needs to be addressed. And I think just in April of 2021, there were 143 published breaches, and about 1 trillion PII records were breached during that time. So quite a significant thing. You know about the French hospitals, and obviously Colonial Pipeline was spoken about previously. So really the implications of a security breach can be quite significant. From a specific business security landscape, this is what service provider customers are worried about: data exfiltration and loss of intellectual property rights, or PII. There was a breach that was announced on Friday, EA Games, and they had a perimeter security perspective. Hackers got in and they didn't steal any customer data. What they actually stole was, they stole source code for the development platform for their games. Now, how they're going to use it, they're trying to sell that IPR for $28 million. And it's thought that they'll probably sell it to someone that develop cheats for P2P, i.e. these player-to-player games. And, you know, gaming is actually a sport now, and EA Sports are kind of quite high up there. So that is a significant challenge for EA Sports. Phishing is by far the biggest threat vector. Two forms of it: the blanket phishing that you tend to get, that's not really difficult to spot. I'm an African prince, you know, send me your information and I'll give you $20 million. That's very, very simple to spot. What's more difficult is the spear phishing, the targeted email that comes into your inbox, and they've done their reconnaissance. They know who you are, they know what capabilities you've got, and they know about you. Those are the more challenging ones that need to be blocked. Ransom DDoS. So basically, two flavors of this: throwing a huge amount of traffic, volumetric DDoS, at a company to bring down their infrastructure so they cannot operate, and you essentially get charged a fee for the company to stop. And application-based DDoS, where they're specifically targeting an application or a server within your environment to bring that down, and you overwhelm the capability of that server. Crypto ransomware we spoke about, everything gets encrypted. We all know about WannaCry, and we all know about Locky and these kind of variants. And more recently, we've seen things like the crypto mining, where resources within your infrastructure, be it cloud infrastructure or be it on your actual servers yourself and within your environment, will be used to mine cryptocurrency, which is then sold. Clearly, the risks to a business, compliance risks, GDPR, PCI. A business doesn't have the security personnel really to cover a lot of these threats coming in. And then one thing that's really quite interesting, there's been a history of many companies choosing point solutions. Email security, let's choose one solution. Network, let's choose this particular file. Let's choose maybe another CASB solution or a CSPM solution. And you end up with multiple vendors to operate, each having their own individual management pane, and you're creating your own OpEx challenge. And that's a problem. But I think core to it, a lot of companies don't have security as their core business. It's not their area of expertise, but they try to do it because they believe they need to own that capability. And that's where the service provider comes in. Service providers have their own unique set of challenges, significant average revenue per user pressure. And that's been ongoing for many, many years, certainly throughout the entire career working with service providers. And the challenge is that when you have pressure on your ARPU, you need to find new profitable sources of revenue. And then, of course, we know about the roaming changes, and that again has put significant challenges on the revenue that a service provider would get. And of course, consolidation and competition in the market drives down and creates challenges. And then the other challenges service providers have, especially mobile service providers, is around the infrastructure investments they're having to make now, both in terms of spectrum and also infrastructure for new investments. And obviously 5G is one of those huge investments. So when we look at what a service provider has to deal with and their customers, they've already got the relationship. They're probably selling them some kind of managed circuit, maybe MPLS-based circuit, maybe even some security solutions. A service provider is very, very well positioned to offer security services to their end customers. And they can be profitable, and you can add in additional services on top of that. So we'll start talking a little bit about the challenge of connectivity. So really what we're trying to do here is we might have, as a customer, branch, retail offices or sites, mobile users, possibly third-party partners, kiosks, IoT devices, and they might all want to connect to software as a service out in the cloud, the public cloud, the internet, or maybe the HQ office or data center. And you end up with quite a challenge here because traditionally, if you're looking at branch and retail, it may well be the branch now uses SaaS applications. However, with an MPLS-based circuit, you're going to have to go to the HQ data center, or you're going to have to go to a place in the service provider and then drop out to the internet and then go to your software as a service provider. That isn't necessarily the most effective way of routing the traffic, and sometimes the user experience isn't ideal. Similarly, with your mobile users, be it on laptops or mobiles or whatever, always going back to your branch, back to your HQ to apply security controls is somewhat challenging in terms of user experience. And what we've seen to try and alleviate the user experience problem, because as soon as you get poor user experience, people try and subvert your security and go direct. We've seen things like direct internet access tunnels for SaaS and that sort of stuff. But then what you're not doing is you're not applying the same security controls you'd like to apply to everyone. There's no consistency there. So we've got this challenge. How do you integrate point networking and security products together? And the answer is Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE. It's a term that was derived by Gartner in 2019, and it kind of just really explains a little bit about the problem that I mentioned earlier. So more users, devices, applications, services, and data are located outside of your enterprise perimeter than inside. So you need to have a way of converging that. What it looks like in terms of actual capabilities is at the bottom here, we have network as a service. And you've probably heard the term SD-WAN. SD-WAN is all about how we get traffic from the user, be it in a branch office, on a kiosk, at home, or wherever, to the place they need to go most effectively. So there are two generations of SD-WAN. We'll initially talk about first gen SD-WAN, which basically gives you the capability of QoS, policy-based forwarding on a number of network layer parameters. The Palo Alto Networks SD-WAN solution is a second gen SD-WAN solution, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a few slides. We get traffic into our cloud security solution either as IPsec VPN, possibly from the branch or the HQ, or an SSL VPN, maybe from your third-party vendors that don't have a VPN client. At the top, we then, when the traffic comes into our cloud-based security solution, we apply our security as a service. Now, this is where we do all of these functions at the top. SSL decryption, more than 80% of the traffic on the internet is encrypted. So we're going to need to decrypt it to actually see what's inside. We said there's a massive proliferation of SaaS applications that companies are using. You might want to use a cloud access security broker, or CASB, to allow activity to go to your sanctioned applications, some granular level of control, maybe for unsanctioned applications you're going to tolerate, but unsanctioned applications you don't want to allow, you can block using the CASB. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail. Cloud Secure Web Gateway forms part of SASE. Of course, zero trust network access is very important, being able to segment traffic, keep separation, potentially between your third parties and all of your other sites, and make sure that you can firewall the traffic with a industry-leading firewall. For DNS is obviously used to essentially look up an IP address for a domain name. It can also be used for other purposes. So if you have a command and control server for malware, that will typically use DNS and to resolve back to an IP address. Now, we can actually block based upon known bad and also unknown, i.e. potentially bad domains. But also DNS can be used for data exfiltration. So we've got that capability as well. Data loss protection is really important. So we spoke about PII. If someone inside your network is trying to dump a whole load of important credit card information or user information out to the internet, say to Dropbox, we can block that, both inline on the wire as well as using our CASB solution when it's at rest. And then for malware, we've got sandboxing capability as well. So some fantastic stuff we can do, and all of the security as a service capabilities are uniform across the cloud, our Prisma Access offering, all of our virtual firewalls, and all of our physical firewalls as well. So you get consistency there as well. Kind of gives you some benefits: speed and agility, consistent security and compliance right the way across all of those different points of access and all of those egress points, reduced OpEx costs, and some improved user experiences. So graphically, it looks like this. Essentially, what we're doing is we are linking in all of our points of ingress, be it the branch, retail, home, mobile, getting the traffic into our cloud security solution by SD-WAN, our second generation SD-WAN capability, and then applying security controls, and then of course either going out to our SaaS applications, a public cloud, internet, or our HQ data center. It's obviously important that your users are able to get access to maybe applications that still reside within your perimeter. This is the Palo Alto Networks architecture for SASE. And as you can imagine, we have potentially our managed endpoints. These could be using SSL VPN to get traffic into the cloud security solution. Could be third parties, vendors, etc. Many companies have third-party vendors. Mobile users using our Global Protect VPN client, where we'll do host profiling, host information profiling, so we can actually identify that that's patched, it's the right user, and it's actually a company approved device. Remote networks, where we might be using an appliance for SD-WAN to get the traffic in. And of course, we can route the traffic down into our HQ, but also out to the internet directly and off to our sanctioned, tolerated, or untolerated SaaS applications. Now, the benefit here is because you're applying the security in the center, everyone is getting the same security policy. It's uniform no matter where you are and which user and what device you're actually applying it on. So that is one of the key things here. Bit of a deep dive as to some of the characteristics you might be looking for when you are looking in cloud-based security. So one of the key things is that when you're looking at a cloud-based security solution, any port, any protocol is really important. There are some solutions that are proxy-based that typically will only deal with some protocols correctly, typically web-based protocols. For the other protocols, they can break if they try and go through the proxy. So you have to steer the protocols that will break, like Office 365 is one of those that you might want to steer around the proxy. Because we're not a proxy-based solution, we can secure any port and any protocol. We're looking at all of the traffic. And we have some patents around application identification, etc. Really, really important stuff to control. We also, from a service provider perspective, have the capability of being multi-tenant. And really what this means is you can fire up a slice, a cloud-based security slice and a SASE slice for your users, and you can sell them to multiple users, but control them as a service provider in a single pane of glass, which is really important. Very, very quick to bring traffic into our SASE solution. We have multiple templates, and there are lots of customers that have gone from almost no connected sites right the way up to tens of thousands of connected sites very, very quickly due to all the automation and the APIs we've got. So there's a huge amount of really, really cool stuff we can do here. I can't go into full details, but if you do have any questions on this, feel free to ask. I'll be hanging around most of the day. On the SD-WAN side of things, this is where we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between first gen and second gen SD-WAN. So as I mentioned, first gen SD-WAN deals with network-based metrics when it considers the path to steer traffic. So to the left here on this graphic, you can see that we're looking at loss, so packet loss, jitter, and latency. Those are the parameters that a first gen SD-WAN solution would be using. You'll typically have a number of paths to get to your desired place, be it an internet path, maybe a 4G link, maybe there's still an MPLS circuit or a leased line. And your SD-WAN solution will choose based upon those parameters. The Palo Alto Network solution is a second gen. We actually identify all of the applications that we see, and we track all of the application experience, so user experience at an application layer. What this allows us to do is we can steer traffic based upon a specific application. The real world use case for that is you're a business, you're going to tolerate Facebook as an application, but it's not part of your regular business as usual applications that you'd use. So because of that, you're going to put that down the cheap internet link and send it as best effort quas. But your access to, let's say, salesforce.com is going to be something that you want to get out there because that's business critical. It's something that you want to make sure gets down that link and the users have a great user experience of it. So you're going to prioritize that traffic at an application layer beyond that. Now that's really, really cool. That's something that is very, very useful. But beyond that, we keep application and network information for 90 days. So let's just say a user says, oh, the network was really bad last Tuesday and I couldn't get access to Slack. It was a problem. You can go back in time. We've got a little time machine here. You can go back in time and you can see down to a specific user level what was happening both at the network layer and the application layer, and you can determine if the problem was with the user, the network, or even the SaaS application by delving in and querying this information. So it's really quite cool, and it gives us an awful lot of ability to go back in time and see where the problems are, but also steer traffic in terms of that specific application. Another really, really interesting aspect to using SASE as a cloud-based service is we have a thing called DEM, or Digital Experience Monitoring. Ours is autonomous, so we call it ADEM. And this comprises of a few things. It comprises today of an agent within our Global Protect VPN client. It also comprises of some functionality within our Prisma Access, our SASE security cloud, that will monitor traffic flows through that secure chain that we spoke about previously. Imagine you're managing 10,000 remote users that are forced to all work from home during COVID lockdown. Your user phones up and says, this application's not working. It could be a SaaS application. Let's say it's salesforce.com. How do you know where the problem is? It could be the user's laptop, could be out of memory, could be the user's could be the user's Wi-Fi, his network. It could be the path from the user into the SaaS application. It could be something else. It could be something on the SaaS side. So what DEM does is it monitors the user traffic through the Prisma Access infrastructure to determine any latency across the path. It generates synthetic transactions from the user right the way down the path at an application layer to determine what that level of capability and what the level of user experience is. But more than that, it also monitors on the user's laptop things like Wi-Fi signal, memory, CPU. And again, you can go back in time such that if, and you'll see probably it's a little bit small here, but on the top right here, you'll see an application Slack that we've been monitoring has had a 12% degradation. It's flagged an alarm and you can see which users it's impacting. So this is actually a SaaS problem or a path to the SaaS service rather than something on a specific user's PC. Really helps in terms of troubleshooting and gives you that lower OPEX as well. So this is something that simplifies the overall security. So we'll summarize and then drop into some questions. So we said that security was really complex and really scary and really difficult because everything's changing, the move to the cloud and this digital transformation and the bad guys getting smarter. Well, actually, managed security from a service provider using a SASE approach helps us. It optimizes the way that we get traffic from the user to the security cloud. It standardizes the security controls in one place. And it also allows you to get visibility of all of that end-to-end user experience, as well as control PII, IPR that's going out there into the internet and block and remediate when that information gets out that you otherwise wouldn't want to get out there. So it really helps basically making that effective, consistent security policy. From a service provider perspective, it's a fantastic opportunity to get closer to your customers, to actually start offering security services that actually give them a positive security solution, but also it acts as a great platform for a service provider to then start the discussion further into security about managed SOC, about managed endpoint, about security audits, about surface threat management. All of these kind of things are services that service providers are then able to offer with SASE as an underlying platform. So at that, thank you very much for your time. I hope it was useful, and we'll go back to Paul and any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason. That was wonderful. Really appreciated and a great insight in terms of the Secure Access Service Edge. A couple of questions actually for me, starting, I guess, adoption. You know, we've talked about culture, we've talked about the introduction of, you know, new technologies and innovation, but I guess, you know, on the one side at the enterprise level, whether it's banks, enterprises, retail organizations with diversified operations, how are you seeing the adoption of SASE at an industry level, you know, not just at Palo Alto Networks, but at an industry level, in comparison to, say, the service providers? On the one hand, you know, clearly their business services enterprise teams are selling these solutions as part of a packaged managed service or outsourced service, but from the perspective of them actually utilizing them and, you know, eating their own dog food, as it were.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question with a couple of different answers. So from an enterprise perspective, there are various ways of getting into SASE, and we're seeing huge uptake in SD-WAN as maybe the stepping stone into a full SASE solution, and the cost savings from internet circuits and basically using internet access above and beyond MPLS circuits is quite significant. So where customers are moving away from service providers and they're massively managing to make huge cost savings. So there's kind of a bit of a red flag there, whereas the MPLS revenue for service providers seems to be going down quite significantly. Clearly, lots of service providers have already identified this and actually are starting to offer SASE services. So lots and lots of operators, I won't name any of them, but your favorite service provider you might have a relationship with already is likely to have some kind of SASE service. The challenge with service providers are some of the biggest enterprises in the world. They're global companies. They have a significant legacy infrastructure, and it's typically been hardware based, and it's a challenge to move from that when you have a significant amount of assets on the book to then move to a totally different solution and write off that book value. Service providers, we all know, love to sweat assets over 5, 10, 20 years. And because of that, I haven't really seen a huge move for them to actually, as you say, eat their own dog food yet.
No, it's really interesting, isn't it? And I know obviously you're staying on and joining Terry's session on 5G in a moment. But you know, if you look at 5G, for instance, I know you said about certain service providers, AT&T is an example in the US on the business side. You know, they're utilizing SASE as part of a wider solution connecting with 5G and SD-WAN as an example. Now, clearly, Palo Alto Networks work and traverse the telecommunications industry, including IoT. Obviously, like a lot of organizations, grown both on the development of the company plus acquisitions. I was reading a blog recently from the perspective of SASE being the future of IoT. What's your kind of perception there, given that obviously IoT is going to follow the 5G panel?
Yeah, so IoT, everyone's clearly talking about 5G as an enabler for IoT, and so one of the challenges you said is that IoT devices typically don't have enough CPU, enough memory to do security well. So you need to rely on something to do security. We're quite a company called Zingbox, and we provide IoT as a service, both within our SASE environment, but also within our virtual and physical firewalls. So it's not inconceivable that you could take a 5G slice for a company, which is an IoT slice, and pipe that into our SASE solution, where you've got your IoT service, which we have enabled, and then you can do your IoT security. So that's not, I don't know anyone that's currently done that, but that is certainly feasible. To date, most of the IoT implementations, I believe, are using the physical firewall or the virtual firewall closer to the edge. A lot of the mobile private networks that are actually providing services for IoT tend to be ring-fenced and not internet access. So you probably need something on site to do that.
Oh, brilliant. No, really interesting stuff. And, Jason, on behalf of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, a thank you to you and to Palo Alto Networks for supporting the event today. I shall now step aside for a little while, and I shall now hand over to Terry Norman, who will lead the 5G session, which is titled The Perfect Storm ? Where he has a brilliant set of guests to join him, including Jason, Alessandro Bavoni from Nokia, Martin Beauchamp from the GSMA, Remy Harel from Orange, and Bachara Kadoum from Telefonica Global Solutions. So thank you again to Palo Alto Networks, to Jason, and I hope you all enjoy the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.